Every community we serve thrives because of the efforts of hardworking people who come together and give their time and resources for our collective benefit. These pillars of our community are invaluable. This series celebrates them. This episode features a conversation between two beloved college professors, each from the College of Coastal Georgia in Brunswick, Dr. Syvillia Averett and Dr. Kyle Fox. Listen as they discuss their amazing friendship and the love they have for their students.
What's one thing that you admire about me, Syvillia?
Please. I don't know. Your fantastic sense of fashion. Best dressed man on campus, they say.
That's what they say.
That's what they say. No. Something that, at least from my vantage point, I perceive is like core to you and your being in higher ed, and like that commitment you have to developing young people, right? Like their academic development, their social development, civic engagement, like all of those pieces, and like how you, at every turn, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old, like your approach is the same. And especially with the Black boys, those Black young men, that's like probably the piece that stands out the most in my head, other than your fashion sense, of course.
That's so sweet of you.
Oh, please. Sweet.
Because you're such a sweet person, which is what I admire about you most. You know that I'm lying right there.
I was about to say, Deacon Speaks said, take the compliment.
Take the compliment.
I was going to say thank you.
Yeah, no, you are a sweet person. However, that's not what I admire about you most. One thing that I do admire about you is, although you're this math and analytical geek nerd.
Love it.
It works because you're also personable. And I think the melding of those characteristics is something that you cannot find in a lot of people. So I give you an example. So you can be real straight to the point and analytical about situations and develop a plan. Here's a plan of action. Boom, 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 boom. But in that, you also are able to connect with the being, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why our friendship works. It's because I am not that. Kind of flighty and imaginative, and yeah, you provide the ground.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a work in progress, I think.
Well,
I don't feel like I've always been that way. But I appreciate hearing that I am, in a sense.
You're welcome.
Oh.
Now stop analyzing what I said.
I am. I'm going to keep analyzing it because that's what I do.
Moving from the work to the personal. Mm-hmm. There have been many times where you've rescued me, and I was like, oh, this is my girl. Yes. Most recently, Hurricane.
Oh, please. Well, so I really am trying not to be like dismissive when people say things like that. I'm like, what?
Deacon Speaks says.
He did.
Take the compliment.
Deacon Speaks. Shout out to Tom Speaks. But, see, in my head, that's not rescuing. That's not doing anything extra.
Okay,
right?
That's not doing anything extra. But somebody in their time of need, you were there.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I do what I can.
Like, okay, I have no power and probably is going to live in a lake for a few days.
Wade in the water.
Wade in the water,
yeah.
But it did not flood, thank God. Mm-hmm. But you were like, hey.
If you don't get over here.
Get up here. Like, oh,
bring your things.
So I packed a bag and went to your house. Like, that means something. Because everybody wouldn't do that.
This is true. And I try to do that, but I honestly feel like the folks that I hold dear to me, I know that if I needed it, they would be exactly the same, right? Like, case in point, what was that, a week ago? I called you.
Yeah.
While I was waiting on my delayed flight and said, look, I might not make it back to Brunswick, but I might can make it to Jacksonville. Come pick me up. You like, all right, I'll come pick you up.
Yeah, no
right?
problem.
Like those, I think that's like,
it's things that we don't think about.
I don't think about it, but
everybody's not fortunate.
I'm glad to help people.
There's a question that I've never asked you, but what's been that moment that reaffirmed why you do what you do for, like, with a student, but maybe with a faculty member?
A moment?
Mm-hmm. Or moments.
There are so many. The nephew that shall remain nameless, the struggles with him and, the tough love situations, the sometimes no, the sometimes lifting him up and encouraging and,
I understand that.
Seeing him realize, after 3 years of, beating that dead horse that, you can pass this class if you just put this amount of effort forth, or you need to plan and be organized and be consistent, and see him now realize that, the start of his senior year, I'm like, about time, like that is the moment for me. But what about you? Like, what do you see with the students, I guess?
Like you, I have so many of those moments. Teaching at Morehouse and Clark, I developed this group of kids, mostly young Black men, that, they just surrounded me. And those that were really close to me, they affectionately became known as my boys, right? Mm-hmm. And pouring back into them throughout their undergrad education, but now their graduate education, but also their lives. When I get those phone calls or those Instagram messages, Fox, I need you, or Fox, what you doing? Fox, I'm just checking on you. Fox, I want to see you. Being invited to weddings and baby showers and all of that. Like, that truly shows, like, dang.
Those full circle moments,
you've
right?
been impactful in these kids' lives.
They graduate and they go off, and you might not hear from them for 6 months, a year, 2 years. Like, those moments when that student number face pops back up on your phone and you like, oh no, what's going on? Right. And they just call in to check in, tell you the next thing that they've achieved, right? Like, those moments are very special because it usually comes with a conversation. I'm just trying to figure out what you doing, where you at, or you still in Kennesaw? Like, I have a baby that was in Kennesaw before I even moved to Georgia, and her saying like, oh yeah, I'm still in Kennesaw, I'm lead instructor now, I'm supervising this and I'm doing that, and I'm just like, I remember when you were fighting with your grandma over her pound cake recipe. Like, what are you doing? Like, being a grown up now. Those moments. And just hearing from them the pieces of what you've poured into them that meant so much, right? You do it and you don't know if it's going to work.
Absolutely.
But you keep doing it anyway. But them reflecting back on the moment, those moments, right, mean a lot.
Absolutely. They truly do. I tell my students in every class, if you come into college or if you come into my class and you still think the same way that you did when you step foot on campus or in my class, you've done it wrong.
Done it wrong.
In some way, your mind or something was supposed to grow and shift. And that's really what I want my students to get from me. It is okay. In fact, welcome the growth and the shifting, right? You can have your mind set on these things, but be okay with those things that are outside of those boundaries that you've put on yourself, and sometimes what society has put on you, right?
Listen, I've many undergrad groups, research groups, and I've said the same thing, right? Like, if you come to college and you have the set of things that your mama, your daddy, your grandma, your brothers, sisters, aunties, community have told you, and you leave college with exactly that same set of things, I think you did this wrong, right? Not that, grandma ain't right about stuff, but your perspective changes on that same thing. Your morals can stay in place. The things you value could stay in place and maybe add to those. But if you don't find yourself even thinking about challenging things that you came in with, you've done this whole journey wrong. But
absolutely,
that's interesting. Good.
I also think that I want my students to know that someone cares, right? And I've had this probably every semester that I've taught. So I tell my students often that I love them. So I say this thing: if no one's told you today that they love you, know that I love you. And someone will always say, are you just saying that? It's like, no, I actually love you. And kids have come up to me, or I shouldn't call them kids because
students.
Students will come up to me and say, hey, that really made an impact to know that someone actually said that they loved me, even if they didn't, but just to hear those words, I love you, made an impact. Yeah. So I want them to know that someone cares.